Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the one and only, the resident Black Spider-Man, Karabon Plili. Today is the very first episode of, are we going to call it the Rise podcast?
I don't know. I was actually thinking about that as we started.
It was in my head because I'm like, the name
What
could
do we
change.
call this thing?
Because the name could change for the podcast.
Oh, for the podcast.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. Not for Rise. Yeah. But for the podcast.
Not
Give
for
it
the
like
podcast.
like a cool name. Not that Rise.
Well, I was
is
going to say,
yeah,
Rise is not a cool name.
Not that Rise is not a cool
The
name.
entire thing is called Rise.
That's true. So for now, the Rise podcast.
Let's go.
We're super, super excited. Thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you are listening or watching us. This is going to be such a cool moment for us. We want this to be an ongoing content experience.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are unaware of what Rise is, we'll get into that a little bit with my guest today. But today I have someone who is a huge inspiration of mine, someone who is not just as someone in the faith, youth leader in church, but also just as a friend, a father, a man, just someone who, just overall just really inspires me. So, man, thank you so much for being here. And before I go on an hour-long intro, will you please let the people know who you are?
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me for Rise podcast, whatever we're going to call it.
Yes.
My name is Jason Sandows. I am a husband to one wife. You need to make sure.
You have to nowadays.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Husband to one wife, two daughters, Zion and Eden. And as of the recording of this video, we're 3 weeks away from our third child.
So if you listen,
which is super exciting.
So if you listen a couple of weeks after this, you could have the third will be here.
The third might be here.
Yeah.
By the time you hear this, the third might be here.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. And on campus, I am a youth pastor of YBF, Young Blood Forever, out in Bryanston, NCCB.
Yep.
And I also have the privilege of heading up a leadership academy on campus called the King's Leadership Academy, which is exciting. You know, everything that I get to do has to do with positioning young people, the next generation, for what God is wanting to do. But we'll get into that just now.
Absolutely. So yeah, man, thank you so much for being here. And like I said, we didn't want this to just be, an internal thing as far as Rise and the people involved with Rise. And before we get into like exactly what Rise is, I wanted to just give a bit of a background. So obviously this started, I want to say a few years ago.
Yeah.
With what Rise as a movement is.
Yeah.
And we had a moment last year, which was our conference.
Yes.
Our first conference that we hosted here at our church at NCCB. And we always wanted to reiterate that we didn't want it to be a NCCB YBF thing.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be a fully collaborative project and a fully collaborative movement.
Yeah.
And we'll obviously get more into that. So with regards to the podcast, what we are wanting to do is get a ton of different people who are not even just on this campus, but like all over, who, just to speak into their journey and their lives with Jesus, and to inspire people listening. You know what I mean? It's like I said, we want this to be like a full collaborative thing. You know what I mean? So Jay, as I mentioned, we had a moment last year, which was our conference, which was amazing. A conference that we managed to pull off with quite little time.
Yeah.
But the feedback was amazing and was genuinely incredible. I think God was definitely present there. People were so aware of just how tangible He was those 2 evenings. And a ton of different people were there from different youths and different pastors, different youths joined us. So it was such a cool experience. And now we're gearing up for another one this year, which is obviously a lot bigger than last year, just with regards to what we have planned and all that kind of stuff. But for you, I wanted you to just give a background on what Rise is, kind of the background of it, and then we'll obviously chat more about the conferences and so on and so forth.
Bro, I could listen to you speak the whole day. Bro, you're good at this, bro.
Bro, this is what I do.
I forgot that you're going to ask you a question. I was fully tuned into what you were saying.
I could have gone, bro.
So this is me buying time, by the way, so that I can
think
answer
about
your
the
question.
answer. Yeah, that's a very professional podcaster thing. So you're a pro as well.
Let's go. I'm getting there. Yeah?
Come on now.
So Rise, as you mentioned, started a couple years ago, and it initially started as a sermon series.
Yes.
I think the dream in my wife and my heart was always for it to become something bigger. We really felt if I can call it the pressure, but in a good sense, or maybe the impression. I don't know if impression is the right word, but the pressure that we felt just in prayer, in moments of devotion, that the Holy Spirit was placing on our heart for doing something that is collaborative and something that has the potential to impact and influence generations.
Sure.
And when we did Rise Conference last year on campus here, that was the second time we did something around Rise. And when we done that, it's almost as though the idea or the penny dropped. It's in that moment that the Lord cemented this concept of this idea of Rise as a movement and not just a series and not just a conference. I think we've had the conversation many times that conference culture oftentimes focuses on a moment.
Yeah.
But then what happens after the moment? How do you sustain the experiences and what has happened at that moment, at that conference? And hence, us wanting to position Rise as a movement, as something that has the potential to impact and influence generations for Jesus. And I think in a moment we'll probably describe what Rise is just from a defining perspective. But you asked me that question. Did you?
Just the background, yeah.
Okay, we'll get it now. Sorry, I'm getting excited.
And now you see who's the podcast.
I'm in it now.
Yeah, you're in it.
Now I'm excited. This might be an hour session. Yeah, so that's kind of where Rise started and what we done after the last conference. And this is where yourself and some of the guys in the Rise team are amazing at. We started building relationships with other youth pastors and other leaders and the people who have a heart for seeing God move into generations and into different parts of the world. And we just started ideating around this concept of Rise. And here we are, a couple months away from the Rise conference, which is going to be nuts.
It's cool, eh? Yeah.
Sure, it's going to be crazy.
Genuinely, what we have planned is like unreal. And we're so excited. And before we end, we'll definitely get into a little taste of it. We don't want to spoil. But like you mentioned, what does Rise mean to you? Like defining it now for the people. You mentioned that we didn't want to position it as just a conference.
Yeah.
And like saying, it's so easy for us in church culture to like use a conference moment as like the pinnacle of our year or the pinnacle of like what we're trying to achieve. And then we get to it and it goes super well. And then afterwards it just kind of like we lose momentum because everything we were working up to has happened.
Yeah.
And then now it's, okay, cool. What do we do after that? How do you sustain that? Hence why we even like with this podcast, for example, like we're starting this months before the second conference has even happened. And we're wanting to continue it way after, you know what I mean? So a very, very small example, but like as an example nonetheless, you know what I mean? But like you're saying, what is Rise to you, like defining it as a movement?
Yeah. And again, just that difference. I think conferences have their space, and there's nothing wrong with the conference. Obviously, there's so many people who have come to faith in a moment, in a conference, in a celebration. That is awesome. I think for us, and when I say us, I'm speaking about the entire Rise team here. We've just really felt that we have the opportunity here to put something together that can go beyond the conference, and the conference just being a moment in the year for us. And I think to answer your question, where Rise comes from, if you look at Youth Day, in South Africa, we celebrate Youth Day on June 16th. And during that time, we celebrate the role that youth played. When the youth of 1976, we know we used to call it Hector Peterson Day back in the day, and the youth of South Africa rose up against an oppressive power, which was the apartheid government at the time. And since that moment, every year we've celebrated June 16th as being Youth Day. And as the church, we've adopted that day and use it as a moment to speak to how young people can rise up in their faith and contend for something great. But what we noticed around Youth Day celebrations, specifically within the church, is because June 16th, if you look at the events, were very militant. Right, the rising up against the oppressive power was a militant action, which was needed at the time. But if you look at how that translates into a kingdom perspective, when we rise, a lot of the imagery has clenched fists. But when we rise up with fingers pointed up to heaven, because, and I love this, I think it's called the oxymoron. If you're listening, you can correct me. Is there comments? You can correct me somewhere, wherever this thing is going. Right? I think it's oxymoron. I don't know. It's like, I call it like a contradiction, whatever.
So,
it's this beautiful concept of, in the kingdom, we rise when we surrender. Now, if you think about being militant and being military minded, whatever, surrender doesn't give off the imagery of rising. Right. If you surrender, you're giving in to the power that's trying to oppress you. But within the kingdom, that is flipped on its head.
Yeah.
And when we rise, when we surrender, but when we surrender to Jesus, and that's what rise is about, is saying that God has this beautiful picture for us. And again, we've just really felt that there's a shift and there's a movement coming where young people are going to find their voice. They're going to step in boldness and confidence, and they're going to contend for all that God has called them for. But we need to understand that when we rise up, it's not about our strength or us being slick or us being creative and all of that. Us rising will be measured by the extent to which we're able to surrender.
Sure.
I think about the Hillsong United song that says, "I touch the sky when my knees hit the ground."
I was legit about to say that. Yeah.
It's that beautiful contradiction, right?
It's awesome, yeah.
Is we rise when we surrender. We look around the world and we see what is happening. And we know that more than anything, we need Jesus.
Yeah, sure.
And we need to find our voice in Him.
So good, man. And like I said, I was literally about to mention that song as well. And I think there's something that I remember in the last video that we did for last year, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Where we had our amazing team member Megan do the
shout out Megan
Ravelli, who did the voiceover for the video, and she was like the star of the video. In the script, which I think you made, you said we won't let lukewarm Christianity invade anymore. And I loved it's been on my mind for such a long time, because I think it's not even just a youth problem.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to point it to youth because people are younger, they're they don't know any better, blah, blah, blah. But as we get older, we see it more and more often. You know what I mean? I look at now in my mid to late 20s, it's crazy to think. And I see it more and more often, you know what I mean? Where the idea of just giving your all to Jesus sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It really is. And I'm probably looking more at myself for this, where it's one of my biggest struggles for years now is the idea of having God in control of my whole life is a beautiful thing. But then I always want to hold on to that 1%, you know what I mean? That and that true surrender of just God, I'm submitting everything to you, you know what I mean? But that phrase that you use, lukewarm Christianity, let's unpack that a little bit. And what were you trying to highlight by mentioning that phrase?
Yeah, I think we and this is such a good question, because this is a point that I'm really passionate about. At the youth ministry that myself and my wife have the privilege of leading, we did a sermon series called "Losing My Religion."
Yeah,
and the idea behind that will answer the question that you asked me now, is that when we get consumed up by tradition or religion, which is action orientated, in the sense that you are pursuing God and not realizing that Christ pursued you and we respond to that pursuit.
Yeah.
When we get caught up in religion, it results in lukewarm Christianity, where Christ never becomes the center of our lives, where there's no intimacy in terms of relationship. And if you look at Scripture, Jesus says that in the end times, people will come and say, "Lord, but we healed the sick in your name, we cleansed the lepers in your name, we did all these amazing things in your name." And then Jesus says to them, "Get away from me," and this is the requirement, "for I never knew you." Right? He says, "Get away from me, for I never knew you." The requirement is intimacy in relationship.
Yeah, sure.
And when we engage in a relationship with God, right, then we're able to step into authority. Then we're able to walk in all that God has called us to walk in. Then we're able to walk in the victory that He's intended us to walk in.
Yeah.
But it requires us pressing into relationship. And lukewarm Christianity is the opposite.
Yeah.
Lukewarm Christianity looks at God as a glorified ATM machine. Right? You worship and you pray and you come to church so that you can get something out.
Yeah.
So even during worship, the part of the service that's about glorifying Him, in parts of that moment, we ask, okay, Lord, can I get this? I have this issue, this challenge, this issue.
Yeah.
And what we want to do with that statement, which you reminded me of, which I absolutely love, is saying that we want not just young people, but everybody to be set ablaze, to be set on fire through intimacy and relationship with Jesus. And that's the main thing. It's relationship. Jesus came and He died, and He was on the cross, and He rose again, all of that so that we can get back to relationship. In the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve got on nonsense, right? And the fall happened, we never lost a religion. And I want to dramatically pause there.
It's a very good point.
We never lost the religion. We lost the relationship.
Yeah.
So if Jesus came to restore us, you can't restore something to the place it never fell from. In order to restore something, the word means again. So if you need to restore something, you need to restore it back from the place it fell from. And the place we fell from or fell out of was relationship.
Yeah.
So the intention of Jesus, the intention of the Father is to restore us back to a relationship. Anything outside of that, for me, is lukewarm.
Yeah.
It's when we just get caught up in the actions. Yeah.
And why do you think, I just want to make it very clear. I didn't prep Jason at all for any of this.
You put me under pressure.
So this is Jason just spitting right now. This is just bars on bars. This is amazing. And before we end, like 2 more questions. That struggle between, and I think we can obviously unpack all of this like more and more, which we will do. But that struggle between relationship and religion, why do you think that's started to feed its way? I mean, this is a layered issue. It's generational as well. I mean, this is 2,000 years since since Jesus. You know what I mean? This has been. We read about the stuff in the Bible.
Yeah, for sure.
This struggle between relationship and religion. But like nowadays, why? Like what are you seeing now that's like indicating that this is one of the main issues that struggle between relationship and religion?
Miles Monroe was a pastor and leader who has since passed away. That was very influential in my walk with God. He taught very profoundly on the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Right. And he had this thing that he used to say, when he used to preach on the kingdom. He said that man is in pursuit of 2 things. Man is in pursuit of power. Man is in pursuit of purpose. Purpose asks the question, what am I supposed to do? And power asks the question, what do I need in order to do that thing?
Yeah.
Right. And if I think about that statement, that quote, the word that stands out to me, yes, is purpose, because we're in pursuit of purpose, irrespective of how we pursue that.
Sure.
But it's power. Right? Man is in pursuit of power. And what power is, if Christ is not in the picture, it puts control over the events of your life in your own hands. And that's the reason why religion is so attractive, or tradition is so attractive, is because it puts the measurement, the metric of your relationship with God in your own hands.
Yeah.
You determine how close to God you are. And you do that by your church attendance. You do that by how often you pray. You do that by how often you pray for others. You do that by action and works.
Yes.
And we know that works in and of themselves aren't a problem. But if you use works to mask a relationship, or works as opposed to a relationship, then it becomes a challenge. Right? And I think that's why it's so easy for people to be religious or traditional, if you will, is because it's safe. It's comfortable. Right? It allows you to put the control of your walk with God in your own hands. Right? And I think that's why people desire it so much. It's easier. Whereas relationship is, if I can use the word, invasive. You are forced to be more vulnerable. I think about my relationship with my wife. And just traditionally, I'm just not a very open person. And there've been moments, with my relationship with my wife that have been very uncomfortable because of the relationship. I've needed to be vulnerable, and that was very uncomfortable for me. But through that vulnerability, we were able to step into another level of our relationship. And when you truly are in relationship with God, it requires something of you. And oftentimes that thing that it requires of you, we want to hide. So we still want to partake in something that makes us feel good, because we're in control of that. And whereas in relationship, we are not in control at all. We still have works.
Yeah.
So this is the way I see it. Like works, religious people, like people who think of religion more than anything, they use works as a means of stepping into relationship. They think their works is going to get them relationship. But people who are in relationship understand that they have works because of their relationship.
Right.
Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
So the relationship produces the works. The works doesn't produce the relationship. I hope that answers the question.
No, 100%. And it reminds me of that scripture in James.
Yeah.
It's like your works are like filthy rags to me. Like if it's not for that relationship, if there's no relationship with God, then what are these works even for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I said, this is something we can unpack.
Yeah.
For ages, because I think it's a beautiful thing, and we'll revisit this. But the last question, I want to kind of end each of these episodes with this question when we interview more people. But I want to just ask, what's your dream?
Oof.
What are you dreaming for? What's the vision for Jason Sandows?
Yeah, I think it'll be tough for me to give you one answer, but I can give you many, but I'm going to give you two.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think my main ministry, the main focus of my life is my family. My biggest dream is to see my wife, to see my kids live out the purpose for which God intended them to be here. I want my kids to be filled with joy, to have a life that is lived out in relationship with the Father, this relationship that I've come to know. I want to have an amazing relationship with my wife, a relationship that produces life, that brings joy. That's my primary dream. It has to do with my family. And then the dream that's maybe more related to this podcast and while we chatting is I dream of a generation of people who are on fire for God, a generation of people who are bold, who are brave, who are fearless, who are not intimidated by the onslaught or the attack of the enemy. A generation of people who find more comfort in the storm than they do in the silence. I think the last time we met as a team, I spoke about a prophetic word or image that the Lord gave me that I felt is for this season and this generation. And I'll just share very briefly. We were in worship, and while we were in worship, I saw this image of a storm, like a crazy storm. It's one of those ones you see in the movies, my friend. Those crazy storms that has CGI attached to it. You know? And in the storm there was a boat, and the boat represented safety, and the storm represented danger. And as I looked around, the boat was empty, but all the people that were meant to be in the safety of the boat were walking on the water, and they were at peace. And I felt like the Lord saying to me that He's raising up a generation of people who find it more comfortable to be in the storm because they recognize the authority that they have in a relationship than they want to be in the safety of the boat. And that's my dream. I want to see revival. I want to see awakenings. I want to see God pour Himself over His people in the most amazing way possible.
Yeah, sure, man. You like that last question?
Love that last question.
Thank you so much, Jay. I think that's what a perfect way to start.
Sure.
This this journey that we want to go on. Thank you so much for highlighting what Rise is. We have 3 minutes left. What do you want to punt a little bit of what we have going leading up to Rise and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
No, great.
Now, I just want to say, Rise is so much more than gathering behind a person or a group of people. It's not by mistake that you oftentimes won't see the people behind Rise. And that's because it's not about people, but it's about what God is wanting to do in this generation. So I guess in closing, what I'd like to say is come on the journey. Put your hand up. Every opportunity you get to sign up to something, sign up to it. The decisions that we make today determines the future that we step into tomorrow. So let's make the decision to see God impact generations today, and that our kids will step into a future where being bold and being brave and being fearless is the norm. And it's not the exception.
Sure, man. So good. So good. Thank you so much to everyone for taking time out of your day to listen to us, this very handsome man, Mr. Jason Sandows.
Let's go.
Thank you so much. Like I said, guys, this is going to be an ongoing thing. We really want to be able to have this be a living thing. We're going to have more guests on leading up to the conference and afterwards as well. We want this to continue for a while. I won't always be the host, which will be cool. I'll predominantly be the host, but maybe I'll be interviewed one day or someone else will take over. Megan Ravelli, I'm looking at you. And Jabulani, you too. And but yeah, guys, thank you so much. This is the first episode of the Rise podcast. Thank you so much, Jay. We'll probably see you recurring every now and then. But bro, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you. Thank you so much to Joshua Murray in the booth for helping us. He's there. He's giving us a heart there for this incredible space as well. To NCCB, the church we're a part of. Obviously, we are so grateful. And yeah, guys, we'll see you guys soon. Peace out. Oh, wait. Make sure to like, share, subscribe if you're on YouTube.
I've always wanted to say that. Make sure to like, share, subscribe.
Come on, ring the bell, the notification.
What's the notification bell?
The notification bell. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5-star review.
Let's go.
If you're on Apple, what do you do on Apple? I think you write a review and just subscribe it. I think that's what you do.
Share it like crazy.
Share it like crazy. Share it with people. If you want to be on, just hit us up, DM us. If you are a part of a youth, leader youth, would love to chat to you as well. If you're just involved with your church, even if it's not youth ministry specifically, we want to have a whole bunch of different people on. But guys, see you guys soon. Peace out.